Imagine it's the year 2035. You're walking through the outskirts of Stuttgart or perhaps Wolfsburg. The air is eerie, silent. You walk past a massive sprawling complex that looks like a cathedral of steel and glass. This used to be the beating heart of the global economy. It used to be where the Made in Germany stamp was forged, a stamp that was basically a license to print money. But today, the lights are off, the machinery is cold, and the only thing coming out of this factory is the sound of the wind whistling through broken windows. It sounds like dystopian fiction, doesn't it? A bad cyberpunk backstory. But here is the terrifying reality. This isn't fiction. It's a mathematical probability that is accelerating every single day. For decades, we worshipped the German engineer. They were the stoic gods of precision. They gave us the Porsche 911, the Autobahn, an industrial machinery so perfect it made Swiss watches look like toys. They were the master race of manufacturing. Relax, YouTube, I'm talking about economics here. But right now, a silent catastrophe is tearing apart the foundation of Europe's economic engine. We aren't just looking at a recession. We are looking at the potential extinction of a specific kind of intellect. In this video, we are going to dissect the brutal, hidden crisis that is turning the German engineer from a global asset into a legacy liability. We're talking about a lethal cocktail of arrogance, energy suicide, demographic collapse, and a refusal to accept that the world has changed. So, grab a coffee, or maybe a schnapps, because we need to talk about how the gold standard turned into rust, on the Spaltmaß fetish, or how to perfect yourself into irrelevance. Let's start with a word you probably don't know, but one that perfectly encapsulates why the German car industry is currently staring into the abyss. The word is Spaltmaß. In English, it translates to panel gap. It refers to the distance between two body panels on a car, like where the door meets the frame. For the last 50 years, German engineers have been absolutely obsessed, borderline erotic, about minimizing this gap. They spent billions of euros, millions of man-hours, and decades of institutional knowledge ensuring that the gap between your hood and your fender was consistent to the micrometer. If you sat in an Audi in 2010, it felt like a bank vault. It felt dense. It felt worth the money. That Spaltmaß was the visual signature of superiority. It screamed, "We care more than the Americans or the Japanese do." But here is the dark irony. While German engineers were obsessing over the millimeter precision of a door hinge, Silicon Valley and Shenzhen were rewriting the definition of what a car actually is. See, you are thinking of a car as a mechanical object. A German engineer sees a car as a combustion engine with a seat attached to it. But the market now sees a car as a smartphone on wheels. Let's look at a case study that should terrify every executive in Munich, the Volkswagen Cariad disaster. A few years ago, VW realized, oh crap, Tesla is eating our lunch because their software is actually good. So VW did what Germans do best. They threw money and structure at the problem. They created a software division called Cariad. They hired thousands of engineers. The goal? To build a proprietary operating system that would rival Tesla and Google. The result? An absolute humiliating catastrophe. The launch of the ID.3, VW's big electric hope, was a nightmare. Thousands of cars were rolling off the assembly line in Zwickau, but they couldn't be delivered. Why? Because the software didn't work. They were literally producing brick cars. They had to rent massive parking lots to store tens of thousands of brand new vehicles that were mechanically perfect. The Spaltmaß was gorgeous, but they were brain dead. They eventually had to send guys with laptops walking from car to car in the rain to manually flash the firmware because the over-the-air update architecture wasn't ready. Can you imagine the humiliation? That is the equivalent of Apple selling you an iPhone and then sending a guy to your house to install iOS 14 with a floppy disk. This stems from a fundamental misunderstanding of the modern world. German engineering culture is built on hierarchy and perfectionism. You plan for 5 years, you measure twice, you cut once, and you release a perfect product. Software development is the opposite. It's move fast and break things. It's beta testing. It's shipping a product that is 80% done and fixing it later. The German mindset cannot compute this. To a classic German mechanical engineer, releasing beta software feels like moral failure. So, while they are perfecting the tactile feel of the volume knob, the Chinese manufacturers like BYD and NIO are putting massive touchscreens, AI assistants, and seamless integration into cars that cost half as much. The hidden crisis here is that the skill set of the German engineer, mechanical perfection, is becoming a commodity. Nobody cares about the perfect panel gap if the infotainment system lags for 3 seconds every time you try to change the song. The value chain has shifted from hardware to software, and Germany is bringing a caliper to a coding hackathon. Quick check. Before we move to the next point, I want to ask you guys, when you buy a car today, what do you actually care about more? The build quality and the feel of the buttons, or the tech and the screen? Be honest. Drop a comment below. Are you Team Spaltmaß or Team iPad? 2. The energy suicide pact, the Nord Stream hangover. Okay, let's pivot from technology to basic economics. If you run a factory, you need 3 things: raw materials, labor, and energy. If any one of those becomes too expensive, you die. For the last 20 years, the entire German economic model, the Wirtschaftswunder, economic miracle, was based on a single, fragile equation: high-tech exports powered by cheap Russian gas. It was a beautiful scam while it lasted. Germany built pipelines directly to Russia, Nord Stream 1 and 2, bypassing the annoying geopolitical middlemen. They gorged themselves on cheap energy, which allowed companies like BASF, ThyssenKrupp, and Bayer to run massive chemical and steel plants at a competitive price, even with high German wages. Then came February 2022. Russia invades Ukraine. The pipelines get blown up. By whom? We aren't going down that rabbit hole today. And suddenly, the German business model evaporated overnight. Let's look at BASF. This is the largest chemical producer in the world. Their Ludwigshafen site is effectively a city. It consumes as much energy as all of Switzerland. When gas prices spiked in 2022, BASF's bill didn't just go up, it went vertical. So, what does a rational company do? They leave. BASF is now permanently downsizing in Europe. They are cutting jobs, shutting down ammonia plants, and moving investment to where? China. They are building a $10 billion complex in Zhanjiang. Think about the implications of that. The German chemical industry is the bedrock of everything else. You need chemicals for plastics, for fertilizers, for pharmaceuticals, for car parts. If the primary industry leaves, the supply chain breaks. But it gets worse. It's not just that Russian gas is gone, it's that Germany's own energy policy is, to put it mildly, schizophrenic. In the middle of an energy crisis, Germany decided to shut down their last 3 remaining nuclear power plants. Yes, you heard that right. While France is building reactors, and the US is looking at small modular reactors, Germany, driven by a traumatic fear of nuclear energy stemming from the 80s Green Movement, turned off reliable, carbon-free baseload power. So now, German engineers are facing electricity prices that are 2x or 3x higher than their counterparts in Texas or Guangzhou. Imagine you're a mid-sized German manufacturer making specialized ball bearings. You're competing with a guy in Ohio. His energy bill is $10,000 a month. Yours is $35,000. It doesn't matter how brilliant your engineering is. It doesn't matter if your ball bearings are 1% rounder. The math doesn't work. This is leading to a phenomenon economists call deindustrialization. It's not that the factories are exploding. It's a slow bleed. It's investment decisions not being made. It's the new production line going to South Carolina or Hungary instead of Bavaria. The German engineer is obsolete here not because they forgot how to build, but because the ground beneath their feet has become too expensive to stand on. They are the best chefs in the world, but the restaurant just set the kitchen on fire to save money on the rent. And we haven't even talked about who is going to replace these engineers when they retire, because that is a horror story all on its own. 3. The Grey Tsunami. Where did all the hands go? If energy prices are the gunshot wound to the chest, this next point is the slow-acting poison in the water supply. It's boring, it's statistical, and it is absolutely lethal. Demographics. Let me paint you a picture. Meet Hans. Hans is a senior mechanical engineer at a Mittelstand company in Baden-Württemberg. He's 58 years old. He can look at a schematic for a hydraulic pump and tell you within 3 seconds why it will fail. He carries 40 years of tribal knowledge in his head. He knows why they switched suppliers in 1998. He knows the specific quirk of the milling machine in Hall 3. In 5 years, Hans is going to retire, and here is the crisis. There is nobody to replace Hans. Germany is currently facing a demographic cliff that makes the Grand Canyon look like a pothole. According to the Association of German Engineers, VDI, The country is already short hundreds of thousands of engineers. But the projections are terrifying. By 2030, nearly 3 million skilled workers across all sectors will vanish into retirement. You might say, well, just hire young graduates. What graduates? Germany has one of the lowest birth rates in the developed world. They aren't making enough babies, and the babies they did make 20 years ago aren't studying mechanical engineering the way their grandfathers did. They want to be influencers, or they want to go into social sciences, or, if they are smart, they are moving to Zurich or Silicon Valley where the pay is double. This is the brain drain phenomenon. Let's look at the math. A top-tier engineer at BMW in Munich might make $85,000 to $100,000 a year. After Germany's punishing taxes and social contributions, he takes home maybe $55,000. That same engineer, with those same skills, can move to the United States, work for Nvidia or Tesla, and make $250,000 with lower taxes. Why would the best and brightest stay? For the currywurst? The result is a hollowing out of competence. Walk into a German engineering firm today, and you see a lot of grey hair. You see the old guard, but look at the junior desks. They are either empty, or they are filled with people who lack the mentorship, because the mentors are too busy putting out fires caused by the staff shortage. We are witnessing the loss of institutional memory. When Hans walks out the door for the last time, he takes 40 years of problem-solving capability with him. That isn't something you can just download from a cloud server or teach a junior in a 2-week onboarding seminar. German engineering was never just about the specs, it was about the culture of apprenticeship and mastery. That chain is breaking. The master is leaving, and the apprentice is currently on TikTok complaining about the 35-hour work week. I want to hear from the engineers watching this. Are you seeing this brain drain in your industry? Are the senior guys leaving without anyone to fill their shoes? Let me know in the comments if you're the Hans or the panicked junior left behind. 4. The Fax Machine Fortress. Death by bureaucracy. If you think I'm joking about fax machines, I promise you, I am not. We live in an era of AI, quantum computing, and blockchain. Yet, the German administrative state, the infrastructure that these engineers rely on, is stuck in 1995. Here is a story that sounds like a comedy sketch, but is actually a tragedy. During the height of the pandemic in 2020-2021, German health departments were trying to track infection rates. How did they send this critical data from the local labs to the central government in Berlin? They faxed it. They literally printed out spreadsheets, walked to a fax machine, and dialed a number. Sometimes the machines ran out of paper. Sometimes the lines were busy. This is the country that invented the automobile and the MP3 format, and they were fighting a biological war with thermal paper. This obsession with paper and process is choking innovation. In Germany, there is a word, Bürokratieabbau, cutting red tape. Politicians say it every year, and every year the rulebook gets thicker. Let's look at Tesla's gigafactory in Berlin. When Elon Musk decided to build a factory in Germany, he thought, great, German engineering, German efficiency. He ran headfirst into the German Planning Commission. The factory was delayed for months. Why? Because of hibernating snakes and sand lizards. I am not making this up. Local environmental groups and bureaucratic processes halted a multi-billion euro project that would employ thousands of people because they needed to relocate a specific population of ants and lizards. Now, don't get me wrong, saving nature is good. But the process took forever. There were public hearings where citizens could complain about the smell of the paint before the factory was even built. Musk famously laughed in a meeting when someone told him the water usage permits would take another year. He just said, "This is insane." Compare this to China. In Shanghai, Tesla went from a dirt field to producing cars in 11 months. In Germany, it took almost that long just to get the preliminary permit stamped. For a German engineer, this is demoralizing. You want to innovate? Okay, fill out Form A38. Wait 6 weeks. Oh, you used the wrong font size. Rejected. Resubmit. This creates a culture of risk aversion. Why try something new if the paperwork is a nightmare? Why launch a startup if the bankruptcy laws in Germany treat you like a criminal for failing? In Silicon Valley, if you fail, you wear it like a badge of honor. I blew up 3 companies, learned a lot, now fund my 4th. In Germany, if you go bankrupt, you are stigmatized. You are a failure. The banks won't touch you, so the engineers play it safe. They refine the diesel engine for the 50th time instead of inventing the hydrogen fuel cell. They optimize the door handle instead of rethinking transportation. The bureaucracy doesn't just slow things down, it sterilizes the imagination. 5. The China Shock 2.0, the student becomes the master. This is the point where the scary music should start playing. Because everything we've discussed so far, the software, the energy, the demographics, the bureaucracy, those are self-inflicted wounds. Those are internal problems. But while Germany was busy shooting itself in the foot, a predator entered the room. For 30 years, the relationship between Germany and China was simple: the teacher and the student. Volkswagen went into China in the 1980s. They were the first. They taught the Chinese how to build cars. They set up joint ventures, SAIC-VW. The deal was, we give you tech, you give us access to your massive market. German executives loved it. They made billions. They got arrogant. They thought, the Chinese will never catch up to our Spaltmaß. They can copy, but they can't create. April 2023, the Shanghai Auto Show. This was the Sputnik moment for the German auto industry. German executives flew to Shanghai, walked the floor, and you could physically see the blood drain from their faces. They saw cars from BYD, NIO, XPeng and Zeekr. And these weren't the cheap plastic knockoffs of 10 years ago. These cars were beautiful. They had better battery tech, LFP batteries that Germany ignored. They had software that worked like an iPad, and they cost 30% less than a Volkswagen. There is a famous story of a VW executive sitting in a BYD, playing with the infotainment system, and just quietly swearing to himself. He realized in that moment, we are not the teachers anymore, we are the dinosaurs. Let's talk about BYD, Build Your Dreams. BYD makes everything in-house. They own the lithium mines, they make the batteries, the Blade battery, they make the chips, they make the cars. They even own the massive cargo ships that transport the cars to Europe. They are vertically integrated in a way that makes German supply chains look like a chaotic jigsaw puzzle. And now the BYD Explorer No. 1, their massive car carrier ship, is docking in Bremerhaven, unloading thousands of EVs that are cheaper and, frankly, often better than what the locals are making. The German engineers are obsolete here because they are fighting a war against a competitor who moves at China speed, has unlimited government backing and controls the raw materials. Germany is trying to fight back with tariffs, taxes on Chinese imports, but that's a bandage on a severed limb. If your product is inferior and more expensive, a tariff doesn't fix the problem, it just delays the funeral. The hidden crisis is that Germany bet the farm on the combustion engine, and while they were polishing the pistons, China cornered the market on the battery. 6. The Kodak Moment, the arrogance of excellence. If you study business history, you know the story of Kodak. They invented the digital camera, but they buried it because they were making too much money selling film. They were too good at the old thing to survive the new thing. Germany is currently living through a national Kodak moment. There is a psychological trap called the innovator's dilemma. When you're the absolute best in the world at something, like building internal combustion engines, you become terrified of doing anything that might cannibalize that success. German executives spent the last decade laughing at Elon Musk. They called him a fraud. They called Tesla spaghettiware. They laughed at Chinese cars for being plastic toys. Why? Because looking down on them felt safer than admitting the game had changed. This arrogance permeates the engineering culture. It's the not invented here syndrome. If a solution comes from Silicon Valley or Shenzhen, it is viewed with suspicion. Take AI and data privacy. Germany treats data privacy not as a regulation, but as a state religion. The GDPR, General Data Protection Regulation, is arguably Germany's most successful export in the last decade. While US and Chinese engineers are feeding massive data sets into AI models to train the next generation of neural networks, German engineers are sitting in 3-hour meetings with legal compliance officers discussing whether an IP address counts as personal data. You cannot train world-class AI if you are legally terrified of data. So, while the world moves toward an AI-driven economy, Germany is building a fortress of regulations. They are creating the safest, most private, most ethically compliant digital graveyard in the world. The German engineer is obsolete here because velocity matters more than perfection. In the digital age, being good enough and fast beats being perfect and late. Germany is still trying to be perfect, and they are arriving at the party after the lights have been turned off. Final thoughts: the perfect storm. So let's zoom out and look at the full picture. It isn't just one thing. If it were just energy prices, they could subsidize it. If it were just software, they could buy it. If it were just demographics, they could fix immigration. But it's all of them at once. Technological shift. The move from hardware, German strength, to software, German weakness. Geopolitical suicide. The loss of cheap Russian energy that powered the entire industrial base. Demographic collapse. The rapid retirement of the baby boomer engineers with no one to replace them. Bureaucratic paralysis. A government that loves paperwork more than progress. Competitive predator. A China that has gone from student to master. This is the hidden crisis. It's not a recession, it is a structural break. The era of German industrial dominance, an era that lasted from 1871 to 2022, is effectively over. Does this mean Germany will become a third world country? No, it will remain a wealthy, comfortable museum, a place where tourists come to look at the pretty castles and drive on the Autobahn if it's not under construction. But the dynamism, the power to shape the global future, that is moving east and west. The tragedy of the German engineer is that they did everything right. They followed the rules, they measured the gaps, they optimized the efficiency, but they optimized themselves for a world that no longer exists. So what is the lesson here for you? Whether you're an engineer, an investor, or just someone trying to navigate this economy, the lesson is that specialization is dangerous. Germany hyper-specialized in mechanical excellence. When the world needed mechanics, they were kings. Now that the world needs coders and energy pragmatists, they are lost. Don't be a German engineer in your own life. Don't get so good at one specific thing that you refuse to see the world changing around you. Be adaptable. Be ugly and fast rather than perfect and slow. And for God's sake, don't rely on cheap gas from a guy who invades his neighbours. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the collapse of an industrial giant, you need to prepare to watch my upcoming video on why the Japanese economy died and never came back. It's the prequel to what is happening in Germany right now. Watch out for it. And hey, if you are a German engineer watching this, prove me wrong. Seriously, I want you to win. Build something messy. Break some rules. Tear up the fax machine. The world needs you, just not the 1990 version of you. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to survive the economic shift. I'll see you in the next one.